Conference championship tournaments are finally over in men's college basketball. And what does that mean? That means the table is set essentially for March Madness to finally take off. It is the biggest tournament on planet Earth. It is where everyone decides, you know what? I don't care what plans we have. Let's cancel them because we got to watch March Madness. And this isn't, I'm going to tune in once it's the final four of the championship. I'm tuning in from the first round on because I'm looking for the biggest upset there is possible. I'm looking to see what bets I could place. You name it, it's happening in March Madness. We are here, folks. It is right here in front of us. And guess what's still here and right in front of us that has not ended? And that is NFL free agency. It has been a frenzy since day one once it started. And here we are a week later, and it's still happening. It's still popping. I cannot recall anything crazy like this happening. And guess what? Both of these things are happening all at once. I don't know about you guys, but I'm all for it. I'm loving it. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another installment of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. And before we go ahead and get started, if you would please hit that like and that subscribe button, share these videos, and hit us up in the comment section. But I want to introduce here my co-host today. That is Mr. David Street.
What's up, y'all?
And as you can tell, our other compadre, Ed, is not with us today as he is living up life, vacation, hopefully sipping a Mai Tai, a Cerveza, whatever it may be, your drink of choice, bud. We hope you're having a good time. But it's just me and David today, and we got ourselves a pretty fun topic here because it is, after all, March Madness, and the brackets are pretty much set. I'm sure people have already done your brackets. You've picked a winner already. Doesn't even matter who's playing in the first four right now. But we've got a lot to talk about, don't we, David?
Yes, we do.
Like I mentioned, conference championships ended this last weekend, and boy, was there some surprises. Uh, I mean, Houston, that was such a big surprise there, as they were pretty much a shoo-in of the consensus number one seed going into the tournament. Nothing could change that. Well, there was a cyclone that twirled into
Mhm.
town and had other thoughts as they pretty much derailed the Houston Cougars hype train and just dominated them. What was it, 30 something points? I mean, they beat them by, I mean, it was a
69
lot.
to 41. And
It- yeah.
Houston didn't even get 40 points until the last minute or 2 minutes.
Yeah, it was kind of embarrassing, but don't let that be a deterring factor because Houston is still legit, and I'm sure they'd rather have a March Madness national championship than a conference championship.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure anyone would, but Houston is still alive and well. They are a number one seed, but they are not the official number one seed in the tournament. That is to the defending champs, the Yukon Huskies. They are the number one official seed. The other two number one seeds in the tournament are North Carolina Tar Heels and Purdue Boilermakers. And you can see why that those teams rounded out the number one seeds, right, David? I mean, you agree with the four number one seeds here?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I know I saw some people trying to make the argument that Tennessee should have gotten the number one seed over North Carolina. Is North Carolina the weakest number one seed? Yeah, I think you can make a case for that. Particularly because the ACC just wasn't that strong this year, Matthew. This is easily. I mean, I feel like we're living in the Matrix when the SEC is a much better basketball conference than the ACC is. So I saw some people say that North Carolina shouldn't have gotten the number one seed, that Tennessee should have gotten it over them. But I disagree completely. I mean, Tennessee got smashed in the first round of its conference tournament, and North Carolina at least made it to the the ACC championship. And you talk about surprises, like sure the way that the Iowa State Houston game happened was certainly surprising, but I'm not surprised that Iowa State won. That's a good team. Don't forget, Matthew, these guys went 2-22 3 years ago. I mean, the job that TJ Otzelberger has done with that program is truly one of the most insane turnarounds that we've ever seen. But just Iowa State beating Houston, that in and of itself is not surprising. What was truly the shock of conference tournament weekend, conference championship weekend, was NC State beating North Carolina. Who the hell saw that coming?
Not me. I mean, the Wolfpack came out of nowhere, similar to the South Carolina Gamecocks, who were predicted to finish last, might I add, in their conference. And we saw the surprising season they had. But the NC State Wolfpack, they that was their tournament to win. It just,
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, they got the best of every team that they played, and they really left a mark, pretty much on the tournament and going into March Madness, as they became an automatic bid, and here they are. They're in the tournament, and they are really hot. So
Yeah,
there are a lot of teams that are going into this tournament hot, and there are a lot of teams that are going in kind of needing a
and
refresher.
here's a fun stat too. I can't remember the exact year since it happened, but the Wolfpack, NC State Wolfpack, they are the first North Carolina based team since I think it's 1996, not named North Carolina or Duke to win the ACC championship. The last North Carolina based team, not Duke or North Carolina, to win the ACC championship was Wake Forest back in the 90s.
I mean, it just show well, let me guess, Tim Duncan was there, but it just
It
shows
might have been Duncan, yeah.
their pure dominance of North Carolina and Duke within that conference. And you pretty much already brought it up and talked about it, that we're now living in a day and age where the ACC is just not that dominant as it used to always be. But I don't count out this North Carolina team, because I mean, they did end the season really hot. Granted, they did not win the ACC tournament, as they did get stumped in the finals against NC State, but they still are number 1 seed. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out. But there's gonna be some surprises along the way. I mean, is Purdue gonna be as strong as the media has pretty much hyped them up to be as well? I mean, is it only a Zach Edey show, or are they going to be able to do a lot more there, even without, utilizing Zach Edey the entire game? It's going to be an interesting one there, but I think some big news that just now came out, and this is a tough blow to a very, tough team, and that's the Kansas Jayhawks. They found out they're going to be without their star, Kevin McCullough Jr., for the entire tournament. Yes, they have not been playing with him the last several games, but this is your star player that you're going to be without when you need him the most. But the team, they're going to gather around, they're going to want to play for him. That's just how things work. Very similar to what David and his Florida Gators are also going to have to do too. I mean, their big man went out too, David. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Dude, you could just tell how devastating it was when that entire arena went quiet. And Todd Golden, our head coach, was apparently crying in the press conference afterward. I mean, Micah Handlockton is our best offensive rebounder, so that's a really huge loss. Good news is that from my understanding, his surgery was successful, so it does seem like he's going to make a full recovery. But obviously, he's going to miss the tournament. And yeah, like I said, our best offensive uh, rebounder. I mean, we are the best rebounding team in the country, or at least we're up there. So because of the largely because of the depth we have and all the big guys that we have, but this is still just a very 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 difficult loss. That I think I know Florida players are never going to admit it, and not to take credit away from Auburn because they've been dominating teams all year, but the Florida players were definitely emotionally and mentally affected in that game after Hanlockton went down, and and also especially considering the way that he went down.
Yeah, it's always a tough blow when something like that happens, especially early on in the game. Does a lot of things mentally to you. We've seen that happen in all major sports, but an offensive rebounder is just so important. I mean, we saw, Dennis Rodman really perfect the rebounding game, but an offensive rebounder. I mean, there's a reason why Florida, their offense is done amazing most of this year is because offensive rebounds, those extra points, those are hard to come by. But when you get them, you need to capitalize on them. And that's exactly what they did. And speaking of a team who, uh, was this close to capitalizing on it. It just happened. And that is the first four. And that is Wagner and Howard. And talk about a crazy game, a crazy ending. This is a perfect way to start out this tournament. This is why we love it. This is the battle for the 16 seed who's ultimately going to be facing North Carolina. And Wagner pulled out the victory 71-68. And the last several seconds were crazy because it ended up being a 69-68 game. Howard just scored. They fouled then, and Wagner made the 2 free throws, but then once Howard got the ball back, after those 2 free throws being down by 3, they shot a 3 ball to tie it, missed it, got offensive rebound, shot another 3 ball, missed it, got another offensive rebound, and then shot another 3 ball to miss it again. 3 misses from the three-point arc, all within a matter of close to maybe 10 seconds. And they just couldn't hit it. And ultimately, Wagner pulled off the victory. But I mean, to get offensive rebounds like that 3 times in a row to potentially tie that game, I mean, you did everything you could there. You just couldn't make the shot. But hats off to Wagner as they go and they face the Tar Heels. They're going to have a tough task ahead of them. But that brings me to my next question, next topic for discussion is, David, who are the sleepers in this tournament? Maybe teams that aren't being talked about enough, or teams that are being talked about, but probably being talked about that they'll probably lose maybe in the Sweet 16 or something like that, that you really feel like could win this tournament.
Sleepers that could win the tournament.
Well, I mean, win the tournament or just sleepers in general that I think can really
Okay,
catch some people by surprise.
because I can't think of any sleepers that could potentially win the tournament, but there's
Mhm.
definitely some sleepers that I think could make it far or do better than people expect. I think Samford, although for mine, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are picking Samford now to upset Kansas, especially given Kansas's unfortunate injury news. I think New Mexico could make some noise, and I also think that who's Kentucky playing? Oakland, is it?
Kentucky, yeah, they're playing Oakland. Yep.
I think I think Oakland could make some noise, and then Matthew, I think you're gonna love this, but I think Oregon could potentially surprise people.
Oh boy, would I love to see Dana Altman just really just win this one. I mean, the season that Oregon has really had this year has been nothing but a roller coaster, of course, with injuries. But this is going to be a fun matchup this first round against South Carolina. As I mentioned earlier, the show South Carolina was not expected to do well at all. And
Mhm.
here they are, they're a 6 seed. Oregon, though, winning the Pac-12, conference tournament, they got that automatic bid. Oregon was not flashy whatsoever this year, but they got in. Sometimes that's all that matters. You just gotta get your foot in the door, and who knows what could happen there. You talked about sleepers. I wanna talk about the opposite. I wanna talk about teams that I feel like are overrated right now, that really should not belong where they are, let alone be there. I'm gonna start out with the obvious, and this has nothing to do with Pac-12 bias, anything like that, but I have such a big gripe with Arizona, how they are just this number 2 seed. They are the top of the number 2 seed, and I I just don't think they're that good. I think that they are just getting so much hype because Caleb Love transferred there, and it's they started on the top at the beginning of the season, started out pretty good, but I just don't feel like they really are that good. This is my opinion. They could prove me wrong. I just don't feel like they are the best 2 seed out there. I think there could have been some other teams that actually could have been a 2 seed rather than them, but for some reason, they saw them as being this, perennial powerhouse, which I just don't see. And then another one, obvious, Michigan State. Like, how are they a 9 seed? How are they even really there? It's just kinda beyond me. Um, I feel like to me those 2 teams, they're not the sleeper teams. They, to me, are kind of the overrated teams. So, I mean, I
Man,
yeah.
a lot of people are hating on Arizona, man.
Yeah.
But I'm in complete agreement with you about Michigan State being overrated. I'm not necessarily surprised that they're in the tournament, but I am definitely surprised that they're a nine seed, yeah, that they're a
Yeah.
9 seed. But Matthew, I think you and I both know the sole reason why they are a 9 seed, like why they are seated as high as they are, and that's Tom Izzo. Nothing more to it than that.
Yeah,
Um,
the man himself.
yeah, but also, very interesting fact is that apparently, what was it? When Michigan State under Tom Izzo is a lower seed, apparently they win like 65% of their games, or something like that. They have a very crazy winning record when they're the lower seed. So this seems very intentional on the committee's part.
Yeah, yeah, it could very well be so. So first weekend upsets. I'm not talking about upsets later on in the tournament. I'm talking about this first weekend alone. Who are you seeing up there that could possibly start the upsets, can start the dominoes, mate, possibly?
Well, why don't I go look through my bracket? And by the way, for the record, the one upset that I do not count is 9 over an 8. Is that
Yeah.
is that really an upset?
No, 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 no. I agree there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have Drake over Washington State. That's a 10 seed over a 7 seed.
Yeah.
I think Washington State had a phenomenal year, but I just like Drake over them. And then I got New Mexico over Clemson.
Yeah.
Yep. And I mentioned before I got Samford over Kansas. Yeah, Samford over Kansas and Oakland over Kentucky, and then
Mhm.
Oregon over South Carolina. And here's a hot take: I don't think South Carolina is nearly as good as its record indicates. I yeah
Yeah, I mean, they could be very similar, I think, to Washington State, where they probably already peaked. There are teams that unfortunately already peaked, but they're in the tournament and they're going to find out the hard way.
yeah
And there's teams that are in there that are also going to find out the hard way that they're playing some of the big dogs out there. I'm in agreement with you. New Mexico over Clemson, that I think could be a possible upset. Did I hear correctly? New Mexico's head coach is it Rick Pitino's son or
Richard
uh
Pitino. I'm
yeah,
I'm fairly certain that it is.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they are actually the reason part of the reason why St. John's isn't even in the tournament.
yeah,
So, son told his dad, "You gotta get out, bud. It's my turn." But,
yeah. That's funny.
so there's that one. There's another one that I've seen talked about recently, be surprising if it does happen, but Grand Canyon, University over St. Mary's. Um, I mean, that's a 12 seed over a 5, and you know how
Mhm.
that goes. And
Yeah,
also McNeese or Gonzaga possibly. I mean, would it be an upset?
McNeese is a pretty popular upset pick.
Well, because it's Gonzaga. We know they like to crumble in the tournament.
Yeah, but okay, but think about this, Matthew. Okay, this for the first time in years, Gonzaga is coming in kind of underrated.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody's talking about Gonzaga, and I've made this example several times before. But the one year that the Washington Capitals entered the playoffs with practically zero hype, they win the whole thing. I mean, Gonzaga gets hyped every single year. They crumble. To their credit, they have gone to a couple of natties. Okay, so they have made deep runs before, but they're coming in. Practically nobody is talking about them. Maybe not receiving the hype that they have been so accustomed to receiving before. Maybe that could actually work in their favor.
I actually mentioned on this show actually a couple months ago about Gonzaga is, yeah, they aren't being talked about, and that could be kinda scary, for a team.
Hmm.
And keep in mind, Gonzaga is one of 3 current teams that are, uh I'm trying to think of the exact stat, but I know it's them, Michigan State, and gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the other team. It's most obvious team I think out there, but uh, that have been in consecutive March Madness tournaments. I mean, this I think they are the number 3 current school with oh, almost 20 straight appearances. I mean, that they are consistently just going into the tournament. Do they win it? No, but they
No,
consistently make it.
yeah, and it,
So
well,
that's why I'm like,
well, and in fairness too, I know people like to discredit Gonzaga because they face an easy schedule, and pretty much the only team that even rises up as a challenge to them is St. Mary's.
St. Mary's.
Um,
Mhm.
but also in fairness, it's like, well, how come the other teams in that conference why aren't they good? They're facing the same teams Gonzaga does, and yet they're not good. So
Well, speaking of conferences really quick and, possibly being weak is, this is the least amount of Big East teams in the tournament ever,
yeah.
or at least for some time. I mean, they only have 3 teams in there. It is just not common for the Big East to have that low of a number in there, but we are seeing the Big 12 and the SEC are tied for the most teams that
Mhm.
are in there right now, so it just shows you that their dominance has really rose to the occasion lately, and I'm all for it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, listen, the Big 12 has always been good at basketball. I mean, Kansas won it a few years ago. Baylor's won it as well. Texas Tech went to the championship a few years ago. So the Big 12 has been a solid basketball conference for a while. But we can never forget that the SEC was once the laughing stock of college basketball. I mean, I very vividly remember back when Florida, toward the end of Billy Donovan's years, we had that run when we went to 4 straight Elite Eights, and we also had a Final Four in there. It was a very crazy 4-year run, and people back then were discrediting our success just because, oh well, you play in the easy SEC, you don't really play anybody. So it's definitely nice that for once the SEC is talked about as pretty much, I won't say the dominant power in college basketball, but it is nice that the SEC is rightfully receiving the respect that it deserves.
Yeah, it's been fun watching their games this year and just seeing some of the new teams and of course the current teams that are up there. I mean, Tennessee is regarded as a great number 2 seed that could potentially go all the way to the Final
Mhm.
Four, if not the championship game, if they're on their A game.
Do you let me ask you this: do you think when it comes to the SEC's dominance in college basketball this year, um, do you think this can trace all the way back to when Auburn hired Bruce Pearl? Because when a school hires an elite basketball coach, other schools in that conference want to follow suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I could say yeah, because the numbers do show it. I mean, Bruce Pearl was a great hire by Auburn, and it's clearly showing there. But
And
not
who?
only is it showing there, but you're looking at the other teams. The competition
Mhm.
is amazing right now within the
Yeah,
SEC. That seeing Auburn team right there, Tennessee, even Alabama's a
Alabama.
4
Yeah.
seed. I mean, it is entertaining. It really is, and they've all
Mhm.
created an amazing atmosphere amongst their teams.
Who came first? Was it Bruce Pearl for Auburn or Rick Barnes for Tennessee? I'm pretty sure Pearl came to Auburn before Barnes came back to Tennessee,
Back
because if I recall
yeah.
correctly, Barnes actually this is actually his second stint at
Yeah,
Tennessee.
yeah, I wanna say it might have been only like a year or so apart.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it was that close, but that could indicate right there why Tennessee made that hire. You know, we
Yeah.
need to get
Exactly.
better too. I mean,
Mhm.
Bruce Pearl was a great hire for Auburn, and this Auburn team, as you saw as a Florida Gator fan, I mean, they looked really good in this tournament. They looked
Dude,
really good, and their defense is pretty stout.
Dude, Auburn is really good. And can we talk about how utterly screwed they got by the committee? A 4 seed?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
When
Like I can understand
continue.
I can a 3 seed at worst, fine, right? And supposedly the argument for Auburn being a 4 seed is that they didn't have any quad 1 wins or they didn't have enough quad 1 wins. Something like that. I can't really put a cherry on it, but who gives a crap? I mean, this is the most balanced team in the country. They are the only team in the country to be top 10 in offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency per KinPom. I'll check later, but I'm fairly certain that's correct. They are a very balanced team. They only have one win by single digits. Every other win they have, they've been smoking teams, and they are not only a 4 seed, but they also get stuck in what I consider to be easily the hardest region
Yeah.
in the
I mean,
tournament.
they're 27-7. Arizona's 25-8. Arizona's a 2 seed. Auburn's a 4 seed. You know, we know a couple of guys, Jake and Blaine Crane from the show Crane and Company, and they're Auburn fans through and through. And when I was watching the selection show and I saw Auburn was a 4 seed, I felt for them. I'm like, they're probably losing it right now because that is disrespect. And that's why I
Dude,
felt like these tournaments
seriously.
really meant nothing. They already had these essentially, they already had who they wanted at each seed
Mhm.
besides the automatic bids that took place with who won the conference, tournaments, but, that's how I felt. I felt like Auburn should have been, better ranked than that, but what do
Yeah.
I know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess winning the SEC tournament, the same conference that sent 8 teams to the tournament, I guess that doesn't mean anything. I'm not
Yeah.
saying they should have been a 1 seed. And hell, if you don't want to give them a 2 seed, whatever. Although personally, I think they should have been a 2 seed. 3 seed at worst. I think that would have been doable. But giving them a 4 seed is just a total joke. And again, I will also reiterate that they are also stuck in by far the hardest region in the tournament.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no arguments here. I'm actually in agreement with you. So, um, I don't know if it's going to end up screwing them, but maybe they'll have a little bit more fire under
Speak,
them.
Speaking of screwed, can we also bring up the fact of how Indiana State got screwed by the committee?
Yeah,
I mean, I think they were 29th in net, and I saw somewhere that that is the highest net ranking for a team that didn't make that didn't make the NCAA tournament. I mean, I can't remember Indiana State's record off the top of my head,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I know they had a really good record. They made it to their conference tournament championship, and again, 29th in net. They're 30 in net rankings, and yet they don't make it. And then meanwhile, you have a team like FAU who was lower in net by like 10 or 11 spots, right? And if I remember correctly, they didn't even make it to their conference tournament championship, and yet they're in. And I don't want to hear this BS about how well they were in the Final Four last year. Yeah, last year. Okay, this is
yeah.
not the same team. This is not last year.
Yeah.
And listen, am I saying FAU should not have gotten in? I'm not necessarily trying to say that, but when you're deciding between FAU and Indiana State, you look at the metrics, you look at their resumes this year. How do you not go with Indiana State over FAU? I don't get it.
Yeah, no, we've talked about it even with college football, how many times last year stuff is brought into the current year, and that's not right. It should not be regarded like that whatsoever. And I think a lot of these automatic bids, there was a lot of spoilers because of that too. Um, the fact that, like I said, Oregon did win. Some of these conference champions really did play spoiler to some of these teams not making it. So um, we're going to have the same conversation later on this year when the committee chooses the college football 12, you know, that there's gonna be people that are getting screwed because they were 13, or something like that. It's always gonna be like that, but there are some cases where it's almost like you do need to say something. When
Mhm.
people are being screwed like that, and that is one of those cases that, well, they got screwed.
Did you see what Seth Davis tweeted out a couple of days ago? He said something along the lines of, "Hey, listen, coaches, I know you don't want my advice, but I'm just going to tell you that if your team didn't make it, don't blame the committee, don't blame the metrics, blame yourself." And it's like how much of an ass kisser do you have to be? I mean, deep down inside, you have to know that there were some teams out there who legitimately got screwed, right?
It's a given. I mean, yeah, and you needed to do better. Like, they did pretty damn good, and they belong to be there, but,
Yeah.
well, they aren't. So why aren't they? Not because of them.
Like, are you gonna tell me that Michigan State deserves to be in over Indiana State again, just based on this year? I don't care about past success or Tom Izzo and all that. I'm talking about this year, and nobody, unless you're a Michigan State fan, and even then, you have to admit, I don't know if my team belongs here. Michigan State over Indiana State.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's ridiculous, but we are gonna go over our personal brackets tomorrow. I mean, we're gonna go in depth, not in depth of every game, but we will go, talk about every single game as we choose a winner in our brackets. I mean, you're not gonna want to miss out on that. As far as for that topic today, that is all we have on that. But we still got some more here to talk about with NFL free agency. But before I talk about that, I want to give a huge shout out to our buddies over at Guys Night. The ladies, I mean, have you ever wondered what it is guys talk about behind closed doors when they're just with the bros? They're hanging out with the guys, the fellas, gentlemen. Are you tired of all the feminized chick shows where the dudes are censoring themselves because the ladies are present or they don't want to get canceled? I know I don't want to get canceled. I'm sure I am somewhere, but hey, that is what it is now. If yes, though, check out the new show from American Daily Press called Guys Night. It's just three dudes talking about dude stuff. No script, no planning, no professionalism. Just the kind of conversation you'd find at the pub after a long day, long day's work, or even at the barracks day room after duty hours. So feel free to drop in, subscribe, like, and leave comments to join the conversation. Dave and Rob like to read the best ones and answer questions in the next show. Phil, however, likes to read the worst ones because, well, they make him laugh. So tune in, grab an ice cold beverage of your choice, and hang out with the guys tonight. You don't want to miss out on that. It's a great show to be a part of. But NFL free agency, it's chaos, pure, utter chaos. I love it. Especially this first topic of discussion. And this is breaking news that happened over the weekend. And that is my Pittsburgh Steelers traded for Justin Fields. We said out with the old, bye bye, Kenny Pickett, and in with the new, come on in, Justin Fields. I love it. I mean, we practically got him for free. We gave up a conditional 6th-round draft pick that wasn't even ours. We got from Houston, and the stipulation about it is that if he plays 51% or more, then it does go down to a 4th-round draft pick. I don't quite see it happening. I'm sure they'll be monitoring his play time. And they've made it clear that Russell Wilson is the starter. Interested to see how he plays, though, because if he's not playing up to par, then are they going to go with Fields? It is an interesting situation because technically these guys are 1 year kind of loners. They are going to have to work out extensions for the both of them because they'll be free agents next year. So I'm interested to see how they are looking in regards to their future. But I like the fact that we got Justin Fields. Mike Tomlin's been high on Justin Fields. Think he's got a lot of upside. Has he been an elite player in the NFL? No. I mean, yes, he has a lot of rushing yards as a quarterback. So does Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson has proven to, you know, do a lot more. Justin Fields has yet. I'd really like to see what he can bring, but I like the upside with him. So that was big breaking news, David.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Justin Fields, he's obviously not elite. I think he has good qualities. He has good traits. He doesn't suck either. But what does suck is that this is a guy who was a borderline top 10 pick. So he goes from that to being traded for a sixth rounder. I mean, can you think of a bigger fall from grace than that, Matthew? In recently,
No, I mean, it is brutal because it almost makes you wonder, like, "Well, is that really my worth?" I mean, I think part of you can't read
Mhm.
into too much because I think part of it is also the Bears. They just wanted to
that's
offload him, and it
that's
is the
fair. I mean,
Bears we talk about, but,
They
eh,
are they
yeah.
are they are definitely they are definitely a very inept organization.
Well,
So that's definitely
we could almost argue that the Steelers have 2 quarterbacks with major fall from grace because Russell Wilson had this big giant contract, and it was so big that the Broncos were willing to cut him and take on this cap space of damn near
mhm,
$90 million
yeah.
dead cap just so he'd be gone. Good riddance.
Yeah, well,
It's like,
and
wow.
that's completely on the Broncos. Like surely you had to know that near the end there, pretty much nobody liked Russell Wilson, and yet you still give him that idiotic deal anyway. Like, what on earth were you thinking there, Denver?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what John Elway's doing there, but, it was very, interesting, but, um, I wanna see how they do. I'm not saying that these 2 quarterbacks are gonna take us to the promised land next year, but, uh, does Russell Wilson have enough in the gas tank still? And can Justin Fields be that, elite quarterback that he was expected to be in the NFL? Still both to be determined because the season has yet to play out. But Steelers are not done in free agency. They've made that clear. They want a big time wide receiver, and they're trying to make it happen as we speak. So keep your eyes out for that. I know I will be. But even if it comes from the draft, right now, Mel Kiper Jr. has us slated to get Brian Thomas Jr. If you've watched the show, I'm really high on Brian Thomas Jr. I think him and George Pickens would be a very lethal 1-2 punch, but, I'm not a GM probably for a reason. But, speaking of GMs out there have been some big moves that have really improved teams in free agency, and I wanna find out who is the biggest winner in free agency. Um, I'm debating on who I want to go first here, but
I'll
I'll let
I'll,
I'll
I'll go first.
I'll let David go first.
Yeah. So my winner of free agency so far, and this wasn't easy to choose. I think there's at least two, three, maybe four teams that could make a case as the biggest winner in free agency so far. But ultimately, Matthew, I went with the Kansas City Chiefs. I went with the defending champions. I think Hollywood Brown is a very solid signing, and I think Patrick Mahomes will unlock his potential in a way that his other quarterbacks, Hollywood's other quarterbacks, haven't been able to do. And also just bringing back key guys like Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed, and there's one other guy I can't. I'm drawing a blank. But I do like Kansas City's offseason so far. I like much of it is pretty much just bringing the band back together. But when you're the defending champions, you don't really need to do a lot. Just bring back key guys, which is exactly what Kansas City has done. So, like I said, I think there's multiple teams that can make an argument, that can make a case. But I like the Chiefs. They're my winner of the free agency so far.
Yeah, I had the Chiefs up actually on my top 3 too. You're not gonna see big splash signings. I'm not saying Hollywood Brown was that big splash signing, but everyone knew what did they need? They needed a wide receiver, and they could still get plenty of wide receivers in the draft too. So I think having Hollywood Brown, that speedster, just like Tyreek Hill was there, is great pickup and re-signing, of course. Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed was really big. And don't forget who else they signed? Matt Araiza, punter. That was someone that they picked up as well. But for me, My biggest winner, and it's almost for the same reasons that David said with Kansas City, and David's gonna love this one, and that's the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Tampa Bay Bucks went into this offseason not knowing next year who was gonna be their starting quarterback, and if Mike Evans was ever going to come back, because it seemed like there was a lot of tension there, especially what transpired last offseason going into the season. No extension for Mike Evans, all that kind of just got shelved. And was Mike Evans going to come back? Well, he was their first re-sign of the free agency, was bringing Mike Evans back, and then bringing Baker Mayfield back. I loved that they brought Baker Mayfield back. Did he deserve as big of that contract that he get? Some will say no. Did he deserve a contract? Yes, he did. I think what Tampa Bay did with him is they showed loyalty. I've said it before. Loyalty is what you really need to show a player when you want him to really perform. And Baker Mayfield's gonna do that. I think Baker Mayfield had a year that really brought him back to relevance. I truly believe so. I think I saw a lot of great traits in Baker Mayfield this last year, bringing them to the playoffs. And beating the Eagles in the first round, which is not an easy task by any means, and just what he did. And I think rewarding him like they did was exactly what they needed to do. Not only that, they brought back is it Levante David
Yep,
as
Levante
well. I
David's
mean,
coming back.
OG.
Mhm.
I mean, he's been there forever, and he's shown that he is a Tampa Bay Buck. So that yes, they brought most of the familiar faces back, but there's nothing wrong with that. I think they had a lot of success this year, and they could still build on that success within the draft as well. But bringing back these key people like they did was important, and that's why I have them as my biggest winner in free agency. And so, David, I'm sure you kind of agree with that too.
I love it, and the Bucks were one of the teams that I was considering as my winner of free agency. By the way, I interrupt this segment to tell you right now that Colorado State is up 27-14 on Virginia in the men's basketball tournament.
Okay,
So
there we go.
27-14 in a basketball tournament. So it seems like offense is optional here. But it's also Virginia. They're not exactly, notorious for elite offenses.
Yeah, it is what it is. But there is a biggest winner. There's got to be a biggest loser. I'm gonna start out with that. Me and David could be in agreement here. He said it should be obvious. I said it should be obvious. But watch us have two separate teams. I'm going with the Los Angeles Chargers here. I feel like David is gonna have a different team, and I'll let him talk as well. But the Chargers here, their bright side to the free agency, it's not even free agency, it's Jim Harbaugh. That's their only bright side that has happened so far this offseason for them. But they've lost Mike Evans, they've lost Keenan Allen, they've
Wait,
lost
Mike Evans? I think you mean Mike
sorry,
Williams.
sorry, Mike Williams. Wrong team. Mike Evans did resign though, Tampa Bay.
Yes.
Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and yes, I'm sure a lot of people are probably yelling at me. What do all three of those have in common? They are always injured. But at the same time, who the heck does Justin Herbert have now? Gus the Bus Edwards? I mean, come on. Joshua Palmer it can be good, deep threat. Quentin Johnson, who was highly regarded at TCU, but he didn't live up to it his rookie year. You're talking about the second highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now. Literally has no one to throw to. I could probably go out there, and be his number one receiver. But to me, I feel like when you have a franchise quarterback like that, it's you need to get some other people. Yes, they also had this. They were their cap situation was the second worst in the NFL. So I will give them props to that for making the numbers work. They did restructure contracts with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, kept them both. That was big. But I feel like they haven't done anything to better their offense, and that's where they need to do something because Herbert's gotta be able to throw to someone. You're paying him all that money. Who's he gonna throw it to, himself? I just I I just feel like they haven't done a whole lot to help better that offense, but it's Jim Harbaugh. I gotta believe in him at the same time, but right now, to me, they are my, biggest loser in free agency. But what about you, David?
Well, I mean, that's all fair and all, but at least the Chargers have been fairly active in free agency. My biggest loser, what the hell have the Dallas Cowboys done in free agency? Okay? Like the best move that they've made so far is signing Eric Kendricks. Okay, but other than him, what have they done? I mean, let's look here. Okay, they re-signed running back Rico Dowdle. They got Eric Kendricks, like I said, Jordan Lewis, and then Trent Sieg, however you pronounce that. They only get four guys for a free agency, and again,
Woo!
yeah, at least the Chargers have been fairly active. The Cowboys practically haven't done anything.
That's because their hands are tied up in all this, court stuff with Jerry Jones and Dak Prescott.
Ugh.
I shouldn't joke about that, but, that's all you pretty much see, anything in regards the Dallas Cowboys right now is it's a Maury show. It's Jerry Jones, her father, or, is Dak Prescott, it's kinda sad, but that is kinda taking a lot of the attention away, but I don't really know what's going on with Dallas right now, and I probably should have chose, Dallas as well. I know they restructured somehow, Dak Prescott's contract to free up $4,000,000, so, woohoo, but, I don't really know what else they are gonna be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I am aware of the Jerry Jones stuff, but I feel like I've been living under a rock when it comes to Dak Prescott. What's the controversy with him again?
Uh, it sounds like a lady's trying to, pretty much extort him, for money and stuff like that. Um, just allegations from several years back coming to light.
Mm,
Dallas, is investigating not only her claims, but they're also investigating because he is performing a countersuit for extortion
mm,
against her.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it was funny because well, it's not funny, but I was seeing up alerts, and I thought it was about Jerry Jones this whole time, but it was
Mm,
actually this Dak Prescott case that was happening. So,
yeah.
yeah, just claims coming up from several years ago, and they're both being investigated right now. But that seems to pretty much be the only thing that's being talked about with the Dallas Cowboys
Mm,
organization right now, which is crazy because it's the
yeah.
Cowboys. They're usually the most talked organization in all of sports.
True, that is crazy. And obviously, when it comes to Dak Prescott, obviously he's innocent until proven guilty. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. We picked biggest winner, we picked biggest loser. And I know this is kind of a tough um one here, but who actually improved the most, do you think? Doesn't necessarily have to be the winner, but who improved the most, do you think? Uh I feel
Uh,
like one of the obvious answers, it could be the Jets.
I was
Um,
I was gonna say Jets.
I
Yeah.
feel like me and you would probably be in agreement with that. That's why I said them. Mike Williams is a great
Hmm.
weapon for
He
Aaron
he
Rodgers out there.
he's dealt with injuries the past couple of years, and that was actually I considered putting the Jets number one as my biggest winner, but the injury concerns that Michael Williams has had that ultimately brought it down for me. But the dude's 29, and it's not like he's going to retire anytime soon, and we know what he's capable of when he is healthy on the field.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the Jets knew that they needed to kind of build up a little bit more, especially on offense, to get Rodgers those targets. Yes, Rodgers is insanely accurate, but you're going to need some bigger weapons out there. I know he was really advocating for Devonte Adams to come home to discount double check Aaron Rodgers, but it just didn't end up happening. So getting
Hmm.
someone like Mike Williams is another great weapon for them.
And
But
they brought some protection as well.
yeah,
Tyron Smith from the Cowboys.
mhm,
I thought that was a really good signing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's his blind side right there. You need someone like that, and Tyron Smith has always shown that he's a great left tackle. So that is a big pickup there for them too. So Jets could be one of the most improved teams this year based on free agency hirings right now. But uh, I want to end the show with one of the other biggest breaking news that happened over the weekend, and that was Aaron Donald from the Los Angeles Rams has retired, has called it quits. In his words, is he said, "I'm full." He's accomplished a lot. I mean, I know he even contemplated retirement even after he won the Super Bowl with them. So he's done everything that he felt that he can do to establish himself in the NFL amongst the greats, and he has exactly done that. Aaron Donald has dominated the NFL for the last several years, and he's not one of the biggest guys out there, but he's one of the hardest playing guys you'll see. He constantly practices to get better, and his just dominance just continues to rise and rise and rise. And this is a guy who still is playing some of his best football, calling it quits. So I mean, huge shout out to him. Congrats on the success he's had in his NFL career. And I mean, he will go down as one of the greats. There will always be a topic up for discussion. Was he the greatest defensive lineman of all time? You could go more in depth of, well, interior versus exterior linemen and all that. But I think at the end of the day, you could say that he was great, and he will go down amongst one of the greats.
I'm not afraid to say it. I think Aaron Donald is the best defensive player of all time, and I
Mm.
think now that he's retired. See, I usually hesitate to call a player the best of all time if he's still playing. I like to wait for him to retire so that we can look back on his body of work. But Aaron Donald is to me the best defensive player of all time. And listen, I mean, he has amazing stats. I'm not saying that he has the best stats ever. They're definitely up there. But to me, what made Aaron Donald stand out so much, Matthew, is the way that he just dominated year in and year out against offenses in a league where the rules continue to highly favor them. A league where offenses get all the advantages in the world, and the way that Aaron Donald was just able to terrorize quarterbacks, terrorize offenses, completely ruin offensive coordinators' game plans was just incredible to see. And listen, if you don't agree with me that he is the best defensive player of all time, that's fair. I'm not saying he's hands down the best defensive player of all time. Of course, there's other players that make a case. But Matthew, you and I are the same age, and I'm wondering if we're in agreement that at least in our lifetime, he is the best defensive player of our lifetime.
Um,
Okay, like I
yeah.
know you being a Steelers fan, and
Well,
me being
no,
a me being a Bucks fan, we've
no.
we've seen a lot of great defensive players,
I
but
mean, yeah, Warren Sapp. I mean,
Derek
the
Brooks,
there.
yeah.
Yes, it's tough. I mean, and he hasn't even been in the league that long. That's the thing, is that in our lifetime, I feel like we have seen some other players that are up there. But one thing that I do want to say really quick about Aaron Donald is that you said it the best, is that numbers don't always mean everything. I mean, when you saw some of the top cornerbacks in the league, when you had Revis Island, Richard
Mhm.
Sherman, uh, they didn't lead the league in interceptions or tackles or anything like that because they never got thrown to. Same
Right.
thing can apply with Aaron Donald. I used to always hate how much talk Aaron Donald got. It was always Aaron Donald this, Aaron Donald that, and he wouldn't lead the league in sacks or anything like that, but that's because he was getting double teamed. That's why you look at his numbers; they may not look great as a Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, but you look at newer numbers like double team percentages, stuff like that, that are being measured at more than they were back then. You're going to see where he stands out more versus the others. But, I can't say an exact answer if he is of our lifetime, but of the last 10 years, the last decade, absolutely, I will say that.
Yeah. And as weird as it is to say, and I actually might regret saying this later, but in a way, in a very strange way, you could also Aaron Donald was a bit of an underdog story. The dude is, I think, what, 6'0, 6'1. He was very undersized for a defensive tackle, and yet he still flat out dominated quarterbacks his
Yeah.
entire career.
Yeah, that was with James Harrison with the Steelers, 5'11", and, I mean, this guy was a bus driver, went to Kent State. I mean, bus driver for Greyhound. I mean, that guy is scary. Yeah, if I saw him
Yeah.
as a bus driver, I'm like, but he was shorter than most of the linemen, and it made it easier for him to get under them. I mean, it's
Mm,
all he was
yeah.
able to work out those angles, and James Harrison caused havoc on quarterbacks and linemen when he was at his peak, but Aaron Donald was exactly the same, being a lot smaller, a lot undersized, versus these big old 6 foot,
Mhm.
six linemen, 360 pounds. He he defied all those odds. But Aaron
And yeah,
Donald, yeah, what are you gonna say?
well, I was gonna say too, I think you bring up the point that Aaron Donald, didn't have the longest playing career, right? But at the same time, look at the dude's accolades. I mean, he could have retired after the Super Bowl, so he may not have had the longest playing career. But look at all the accolades, all the awards, all the AP, all the first team All Pros that he collected. Right?
Yeah,
I know longevity is important, but when you look at the hardware that dude has collected, I mean,
yeah. It,
yeah,
it, it is up there, so it just shows his greatness just right there. He has nothing left to prove. So,
exactly.
uh,
That's really what it came down to. He has nothing left to prove.
yeah, props to him. The game will miss him, but the game will go on as it always does. So, who's the next guy up? That's the question. Next guy up, who is it? We will find out.
Did
But
you
that
see the Rams tweet? They said quarterbacks rejoice when announcing Donald's
Yeah,
retirement.
and then Kyler Murray too. Hey, quarterbacks are happy, that is for
Yeah.
sure, but, hey, you still there's still a lot of guys out there that are still threatening quarterbacks every day. I mean, Max Crosby, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, the list goes on. They are in your face, and they will always be in your face. I mean, I joked today, me being a Steelers fan, I do live in Cincinnati. They signed, Trent Brown, another big old offensive lineman. They got 2 big guys on tackles now, Orlando Brown, Trent Brown. Still can't stop TJ Watt, though. That's what I keep telling, "Y'all signed him, you ain't gonna stop TJ Watt." Just letting you know.
For
So,
sure.
but that's how it is, and, I love it. We have an amazing crop of talent in the NFL. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So, but that's about all we have today, folks. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. We go over our brackets. Comment on your predictions right now. See if it aligns with ours tomorrow. Let us know your biggest upsets, your sleepers, all that. We are really anxious to hear what you guys have to say about that. But also, please hit that like and subscribe button. Share these videos to people who you know. Let them know. We're here to talk sports. We're here to talk about the stuff that you guys want to hear. That's why we are here. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.